Hi, I'm Katie. I'm 22 years old and I have lupus. That may be a different introduction if you've been watching my other videos. I usually say I have bipolar, which I definitely also have. Um, but I'd like to make this video about my diagnostic experience getting diagnosed with lupus. Um, Being bipolar and having an autoimmune disease is a very complex. I'm petting my cat as this is going on. Sorry. Being bipolar and having an autoimmune disease can be very confusing because a lot of doctors like to say that somatic symptoms are a response to psychological symptoms, and that is indeed what I dealt with for a long time. Part of my worst anxiety experiences were thinking I was going to die in my sleep. That was not the case. It was just anxiety, but for a long time I got labeled as a hypochondriac because I had all these things wrong with me that didn't make sense. And when I would go to doctors or report it to doctors, they would brush it off. They would not take it seriously. And I'm not necessarily bashing them, but I am saying they could have done better. I could have gotten diagnosed sooner and I could have gotten treated sooner. So, I've kind of referenced some of these events in my previous videos, but in the fall of 2016, I was in treatment for bipolar disorder. I was living in Kentucky going to college. I was experiencing some out of nowhere pain, just general pain, really my skin. I guess you would call it nerve pain. Um, it was like nothing I'd ever had before. I was crying trying to get out of bed, and when I took a shower, I was crying because the water hitting my skin on my chest hurt so bad that it made me cry. It was very difficult to deal with. I went to the school nurse. She told me that I will shame this. This was incredibly irresponsible of her to say. She said since I had been on the Depo-Provera birth control shot for many years, which is not recommended, that is true. She said since I had been on that for many years that I probably had osteoporosis. I was 19 at the time. She said I probably had osteoporosis from the Depo-Provera shot, which scared the daylights out of me. Um, on a trip home that I had, I went to my GP. I told him my symptoms. He asked if I had had a butterfly rash because the symptoms fit autoimmune disorder. He was checking for lupus. At that time, I did not have a butterfly rash. He ran the tests. Everything came back normal. But I was having general pain, mainly nerve pain, pain in my joints, really in my hips and my knees, my hands. So I have a history of arthritis in my family. I do indeed have scoliosis. That was found by accident, actually. I was having some GI problems, and a GI x-ray showed I had pretty bad scoliosis, but that's the least of my concerns. Um, all my test results came back completely normal, um, and I gave up at that point because my symptoms weren't bad enough to really hinder my day-to-day life, and I wasn't hell-bent on getting an answer at that point. But as time went on, my symptoms got more severe. And again, I've referenced many of this in other videos. Around the beginning of 2018, I began losing my hair, and I began getting quite psychotic. And I attribute this to medication that I was on, an antipsychotic. It was a new one I had switched to because I had begun having auditory hallucinations, which were new for me. Um, Also, I guess at this point it's important to mention that I had two seizures in 2017. I was conscious during them. I can't find any name for them. My doctors said there's nothing to be concerned about, but I feel like that's notable. Um, so I began losing my hair in early 2018. It was breaking off and coming off at the root. I had bald spots, and it was just thinning in general. Um, I had some fun with it. I bleached it. I dyed it all sorts of fun colors until it was all kind of generally gone. I dyed it back a brown and cut it into a pixie cut and just kept it in a pixie as it fell out. So, yeah, but I would wear wigs on top of it. I had a lot of fun with the wigs. I don't regret it. It was pretty fun being able to be like a long curly blonde one day and a short gray bob the next day. But I was deteriorating. The psychosis kind of stayed. My anxiety, my health anxiety, I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I just had really strange symptoms, and I can't even think to describe what all symptoms I was having, but I was gaining weight rapidly, and towards the end of the summer, I got very, very, very sick. I could not take care of myself. I had to quit my jobs. I applied for disability. I was not doing well whatsoever. I was very weak. I was very fatigued. I was very depressed. Still psychotic somewhat. I just had a very hard time functioning. Everything hurt all the time. And, you know, at that point, I was 21. I shouldn't be experiencing that sort of experience. So, as I've alluded in other videos, I was in an abusive relationship. I was kind of forbidden from seeing a doctor. Also, I was paranoid that if I saw a doctor, I would be told I was dying, and I didn't want to know when I was dying. That's a whole other story. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's how it was. So, time went on. Around August 2018, I began making a recovery. I was able to take care of myself better. During the summer at my worst, my parents had to take care of me for about a week, week and a half. I'm petting my cat, sorry. But I slowly got better. I never got 100%, but I was able to function. And in November of 2018, I began a very rough breakup with this abusive boyfriend. I was engaged to him, actually, but that doesn't really matter. But I was dealing with the breakup with him, and it was stressing me out, and it was making me worse, psychotically and symptomatically with my pain and whatnot. I ended up kicking him out. I had an apartment to myself, and I began struggling to take care of myself day to day because of my pain. As you can see, stress triggers flares for autoimmune diseases. And I had decided that lupus was what was wrong with me. And my ex, whenever we were still speaking at the time, said I wasn't special enough to have lupus. And so I just put it off my radar. A friend of mine insisted that I need to look into lupus, and so I did. And a couple months later, around March of 2019, I was in such bad shape physically and mentally from the breakup and from the physical illness that I had to move back home with my parents. And that was a good thing because I finally saw a doctor. And my initial test results were more than I ever could have bargained for. Not only did I don't know if I'll go into the specifics of what my test results showed, because everyone's results can be different and they can still have a diagnosis. But I showed strong inclination towards lupus and Sjogren's. No rheumatoid arthritis, but lupus and Sjogren's were high on my list, and my liver enzymes were out the wazoo, which could be explained by alcohol use, but it was more towards the lupus and Sjogren's attacking my organs. And fun fact, I found out that lupus and Sjogren's and whatnot can be triggered by stress, so I can kind of blame my ex for all this, but, you know. So, I saw a rheumatologist who somewhat agreed with my test results, agreed that I needed treatment for it. I tried prednisone, and I said, are you sure that with me being bipolar that prednisone's a good idea? And he said, yeah. And 2 days into the prednisone, I had an appointment with my psychiatrist, and I said, "Are you sure prednisone's a good idea with me being bipolar?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Well, let me tell you, 3 days, 4 days into prednisone and bipolar is not a good idea. When you Google taking prednisone while you're bipolar, you find all sorts of information about inducing psychosis, which did happen to me. So I had to stop that immediately. And the next course of treatment was tramadol. Um, I didn't set out looking for pain pills. I would rather fix the problem than put a band aid on the symptoms. But that's the best I can do for right now. And tramadol, I have some pretty rough side effects from. It makes me pretty nauseous and tired, and I already take Adderall to fight fatigue, and so taking something that basically counteracts the effects of what I take for fatigue is frustrating. But I am managing it. But what I can say is what got me diagnosed was taking photos of my symptoms. I took photos of all of my rashes. I took photos of all of my swelling. I documented when anything and everything happened, and I forced doctors to listen to me. Because doctors, as I have learned, deal with hypochondriacs every day, and I was thought to be a hypochondriac for so long, and I wasn't. I was right. And that's something that I've dealt with on a personal level. Like, you know, I was I was supposed to be a hypochondriac. I was supposed to be fine. I was supposed to think that I was sick because I had this going on, and I Googled it and it said I had this, but no, I was right. I did have lupus. And it's been interesting coping with that. It's been interesting to say the least. I haven't reached a solid treatment for it yet. I'm still just bandaging the symptoms, but that's what I'm doing so far. That's my diagnostic story. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't have a treatment story yet. I hope that I will someday. I'm doing okay right now. I'm managing my pain. I'm managing my fatigue. My organs are doing okay. My liver's not great, but it's stable. My kidneys are fantastic, which is surprising considering that I also take lithium for bipolar. So I'm pretty grateful that I'm in the shape that I'm in, all things given. But so that's my story. Hopefully, I'll have more to add later on. But if you are looking to get diagnosed, I must say you have to be your own advocate. You have to take photos. You have to make your doctors listen. I mean, you're paying them to sit there and listen to what you tell them is wrong. You have to request tests, and if they say no to a test, you should ask them for documentation for them saying no, because that's irresponsible. You have to take charge of your own health. I mean, I was definitely a hypochondriac, and then I ended up being right. So, I'm not any miracle story, but it seems to be the status quo that this is what happens to people with chronic illness is they're ignored for years and years until they can't tolerate it anymore. So I hope that my story can encourage someone to get the help that they need, get someone diagnosed. I don't know. But maybe sometime in the future I'll have a more encouraging story to post, but that's my diagnostic story.